controversial subjects with the facts can be tense, but we are a sub-science here to make things make sense.
Well, let's talk about poo.
Mitch just
I
frickin'
farted
farted.
right in the mic. Those who are watching know it's not true. It's a little
He lifted
side
up his
joke there.
asshole to the mic and farted it out.
Okay, I'm so excited to talk about fecal transplants, and I didn't really realize that. A couple people we mentioned this to, who we know, had no idea what it was, and then were mind blown. So I'm excited if you have not heard of fecal transplants to talk about it, even if you have the research that I came across, and I'm sure you did as well. It's just so cool, and honestly feels like, to me, this is just my own opinion, one of the most exciting fields in biology. It feels like there's so much promise in this space and undiscovered breakthroughs. What are you laughing?
I'm the gay science podcast is obsessed with ass stuff.
No.
We're obsessed with asshole science.
Okay, it doesn't have to just be ass stuff.
Kinda does.
But I guess you're right. Fine.
Yeah, fecal microbiota transplant.
Okay, but in one of my studies, I will explain why that's where it begins, but not where it has to go. So let's first maybe just talk about what it is for those who don't know. Fecal being poo-poo. I feel like you hate the word poo.
I hate the word
Greg goes
poo.
shit. And if I go
Yeah.
oh, did you poo? He'll be like, oh, Mitch. Oh, gross.
No, but you also
stop."
do this thing where you go poo poo. You're did you poo poo? I'm that's disgusting.
I do not say, do you poo poo?
You do. You oh my god, this is we're side noting, but it's shit. If I want to talk about feces, I want to be shit, feces, nah. But you're sometimes poo poo. You try to make it childish and
do
you
not-
try to make it pass as something that's not. Yeah, and I'm I don't like it. I'm this is not a fun game.
Okay. Well,
let's go
talk
back.
about
Let's go
shit.
back.
Let's talk
Yeah.
about shit.
Shit.
So, fecal transplants. Okay, most people have heard of our microbiome and are aware that we have tons of bacteria on our skin, in our gut, all over
More
our bodies.
bacteria in our bodies than our own human cells.
Yeah, and more through the years, scientists have realized that this bacteria, in particular our gut microbiome, has a huge impact on our physical health, our mental health, and the makeup of that bacteria is just as much a part of who you are potentially than what you consider yourself.
The gut-brain axis is the name of the way in which these microbiomes are affecting all the sort of hormone regulation in your body. It's absolutely so complicated. It's
Right.
You need an algorithm of millions and billions of bacteria in order to maybe even have one strong correlation. So we're at the beginning of this concept in science in many ways, and through our lifetime it will become more and more significant, but I even think we're going to die before it ever becomes reaches its full potential of understanding.
If you think about how hard and long it took to do the Human Genome Project, and then knowing that the amount of DNA present in these bacteria in your body is so exponentially higher. And on top of that, it's all different colonies, all different kinds, and every human has a different makeup, and it changes through our lives is an interesting thing. As we age, as we when you are birthed through the vaginal canal, that impacts what your microbiome will be growing up, and so
also
all
what
these
you
exposures
eat when you're young, when you're literally between the years between 0 and 5 last the rest of your life,
and even
kind of has to do
even
with that
beyond people
Yeah.
changing their diets long term can change the whole makeup of their bacteria. But like you said, it's so unknown right now. It's kind of a catch-all term to being we don't really know what a good and bad bacteria is.
One thing I'll say just to start as an example is major depressive disorder is a form of depression that is medically understood in humans. And then what they'll do is they'll look at the microbiomes of people with major depressive disorder, and they'll look at the microbiomes of people who are quote unquote healthy and don't have it. And they've literally found an increased abundance of Agarthella, Atopobium,
Love
and
them.
Bifidobacteria, and decreased Facialobacterium. So it's
Can't live with them, can't live without them.
so it's they're literally okay, when we look at all of these severely depressed people, and then we look at their microbiomes, and we look at health people, and we look at their microbiomes, we're oh my god,
Seeing differences.
we are actually seeing that all these different people with different backgrounds have this way more of these bacteria, and for some reason less of these. So it's okay, cool, they know that, but they don't necessarily know why or what those bacteria are doing. So a lot of this research is still early and just based on those concepts, even though it's what the heck is the Agarthella doing? But sometimes what they'll realize is that bacteria is essentially breaks down specific nutrients and things that do lead to the creation of serotonin. So they like make that kind of jump. They're like,
Right.
oh, you're
Like,
actually
maybe this is what's happening when you have more of these.
yeah, you
bacteria.
don't have the bacteria that is actually better for breaking down specific parts of essential amino acids that make serotonin. Interesting. But again,
Right.
it's so like not they can't draw the lines the way they can with like,
Yeah.
you know, how oxygen enters your blood or something like that, which we know.
But it feels like, not that we're close to that, but we'll be getting closer. Like, so much research is going into
Yeah.
this. It is important to note that there is a lot of exploitation in this field as well, with like gut biome, like supplements and foods
Yeah.
that are claiming to help, or having, like, obviously, like, I eat yogurt and Greek yogurt, but there's lots of
Yeah.
companies that claim like this will like give your gut bacteria like wholesome food, and
Or
there's
probiotics.
probiotics, prebiotics.
Yeah.
It's just an interesting field that, all to say, we don't really know. It's conceptually a good idea, but like, it comes down to the strain of bacteria. Do we really
Yeah.
know what we need? Right now, we don't really, and that's
and
what
even like
studies are.
kombucha and all that like BS. It's like, no, the best like prebiotic and probiotic is like onion and garlic. You know what I mean? Like, it's like when you actually like learn about nutrients, you're like, wait, that, you're like, yeah, okay, like that has everything, kind of has everything you eat is like a prebiotic technically, but some of the most like abundant and like interesting things are just like whole foods. It's just like
Yeah.
classically the thing where you're like spending $7 on like some weird like tea that someone fermented,
Right,
but
just
it's
like, eat
not
some
like
garlic.
yeah, it's like you need to know what it's doing, and it's like, yeah, like just like eat an onion, a raw onion.
For reference too, though, like, probiotic is the bacteria, and then prebiotic is what they're eating. Like,
Yeah.
so if you have probiotics, that's one thing, but if you're not having the right sort of food for them in your stomach, then maybe it's gone to
Yeah.
waste, is the idea of why
Yeah.
prebiotics are important, so that you're like helping to sustain
Yeah.
those healthy, quote unquote, bacteria in your stomach. What do you want to talk about? Like, I have some really cool studies.
Go.
Because I will say
Go.
the biggest caveat for this is so much of this research has been done in mice, as most all
Oh,
research.
the rats and the mice of this world.
But I have a really, really cool study that was done in humans. So let's also like clarify, fecal transplant means actually taking the feces of one human or mouse and putting it in the other one. Now,
Hot.
yeah, so like
Butt
as a
play.
gay person, this is really hot.
We love it.
I have to be honest. Reading a different study on mice that I'll talk about after, it sounded like they were feeding it to them. And I was like, am I misunderstanding this?
Like whether you go right up thine butt.
Yeah, so
yeah, they
for
do
me-
feed it to some of them.
Okay, I
Yeah.
kind of always thought it was like, here, we're gonna like shove it up your butt. And
Yeah.
that's gonna like help. And surely I'm like, it must be a distilled version that's not just like, here's a piece of poo. And like shoving
Yeah,
it
it's
up.
like in
It's not,
capsules.
yeah. So in that mouse study, it was like, and then we fed them over the course of 8 weeks. And I was like, fed them? That's not the version that I want. Anyway, this one is
Oh
in
my
humans.
God, I wanna barf.
I do not know how it was administered, but it was looking at the gut microbiomes of people with advanced melanoma, which is a kind of skin cancer, that did not respond well to immunotherapy. So immunotherapy for this, like for melanoma, has a failure rate of 40%. So people get immunotherapy, it doesn't work for a lot of people.
Oh my God, that's a lot.
So this study is a phase 2 clinical trial in humans, which to me, I was like, this is so cool. It's actually being tested in humans to see if it works. And so they did a fecal transplant from melanoma patients that had good responses to immunotherapy. So like they got immunotherapy and they saw a reduction in tumors or disease, into people who had immunotherapy but had no results. It was only 15 people. Again, it's just like the beginning of these trials. And of those 15 who had not had any success with previous, 6 of them, after getting a fecal transplant, showed reduction in tumors and disease stabilization that lasted more than a year.
Wow.
And the study was like, this is highly unlikely that they would spontaneously get the ability to suddenly the second time be able to respond to it. That was like hugely promising.
Oh my God, if I ever get sick, shove it in my hole or make me eat it.
Yeah. And going back to what I said earlier, it's like interesting because right now it's just a catch-all. Like, We know gut bacteria has an impact. We have no freaking clue why or which ones are doing this. So the long-term goal is like, we can figure this out. In this case, for example, they're like, we want to be able to help patients who were not responding to immunotherapy. Once we know what is actually causing the change, then we might be able to just create like capsules with the optimal bacteria and just focus on that instead of like doing a whole fecal transplant.
Okay, so also on top of that, was sort of like, woo, 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 I want fecal feces, put it in me. But then there are people have died.
Oh.
Yeah, so in some I read a study about like why there needs to be like I kept reading as being like, it's not a panacea. Can you what's
panacea?
a panacea?
It's just like everything. Or maybe it is panacea. I don't know.
You're the Italian. No.
It means
the
like,
panacea.
Okay, this is like one of those words that I like think I know what it means. I'm going to try and guess and I'm going to look up the definition. But
maybe because I'm thinking like Pangea.
Panacea to me is like a catch-all. Like it can cure everything.
Yeah, so like I was reading a study that was literally called like why fecal transplants are important, but they're not a Pangea. I'm kidding. That's
let's hear how it sounds. Panacea. Okay. And it says a solution or remedy for all difficulties or diseases.
Yeah. Okay. So for example, they're like, we need to be really careful with this because what can happen is you put by mistake bacteria in someone, and the bacteria is like antibacterially resistant to specific medication that person needs, and then they die. So like this is This is like
it could change
so
the whole
rare
body chemistry.
and this is also studies on people who were like terminally ill.
Okay,
and so it's like not to say that that's like in any way makes it okay, but like it's just like people die for a lot of different reasons. Actually, this brings me to another ethical issue that was brought up in the study, which is like, if you give someone else a fecal transplant of their microbiome, because of how intense people think the microbiome affects the brain, if something happens in the future to them, for example, they get colon cancer or they get something, what happens if you start to realize like, well, maybe that cured you of the thing acutely, but chronically you now died of something? Like, is there ethical reasons why maybe... Like, you know what I mean? Like you're essentially, it's almost like not like a brain transplant, but it's like,
you don't know the long-term impact of it necessarily or the trade-off, right? Like,
yes, exactly.
And maybe that trade-off's worth it. Maybe it does help you deal with something that could have an immediate negative effect on you for the cost of something that long-term will, like dealing with, like, lots of drugs do that. Lots of drugs, it's like you might die in a year, so this drug will keep you alive, but then you might die of something else because that drug is really intense on your body.
Yeah. So it's like, that's true. Like kind of for everything though. You know what I mean? Like you can get, like I take antibiotics when I get strep. In the future, I might be like, when I become antibiotic resistant before everyone, be like, well, should I have just like really suffered through strep and like hope I didn't die? Like it's kind of like, no, like I guess not. But it's like acute versus chronic. Like there's some ethical things there, especially if you're taking it from someone else and then you can put blame on someone. Whereas I can't blame someone for the antibiotic I took.
Right. But there is a bit of like, now with COVID, it's like, well, we know you're getting that strep. Well, actually strep is weird because you like have it a lot and it probably is living in you. But I'm so much more aware now of when I get a cold, being like, someone fucking gave this to me.
Oh God. If a friend shows up to one of my parties ever again, like I got a sniffle, I'm gonna slam that door in their face and I'm gonna say, go home, be like, you're fun, but you're not that fun.
Yeah, that's not worth it.
Unless it's like Beyonce or someone, I'd be like, hey, come in. But
come sneeze on me. Achoo!
Oh God, I would let Beyonce sneeze in my hole.
Would you let her fecal plant into you?
Yes, are you kidding? Obviously, I want a fecal microbiome transplant from Beyonce.
You're just like a superstar after that.
She could sell that.
That's true. That is.
Wait, I want to talk about mine about C. difficile.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay, when I say C. difficile, I just don't know why that is such a like visceral thing in my head, and I'm like, did I have it?
The like when
C.
you got
difficile.
really sick. Yeah.
Like, have you ever heard that? Like, for some reason, I was like, C. difficile. Like, was that what went around like residents when we were in university?
Wait, what am I thinking about? What's the parasite you had?
Oh, I had Giardia lamblia or Giardia lamblia. Lamblia.
I think, yeah.
I had Giardia lamblia.
C. difficile. Yeah, I think it's just like maybe a common, isn't it?
It's a common bacteria that causes
feces,
diarrhea.
Right?
Yeah. And
like,
so like...
Okay, so like, I think you're right. In university, I feel like that's the one that like ends up in the lettuce and like...
Yeah, like
they
for
have
some
to close
reason
down
I was
all the food places.
Like, because it's like the...
Or E. coli is that as well.
Well, the actual bacteria is like Staphylococcus difficile. But like C. difficile, like I feel like people have said that to me and I'm just like, yeah, C. difficile. But I've never really been like, oh, you're saying a bacteria.
Right. It just becomes such a normalized word.
Yeah, like
like salmonella, where you're like,
where
it's literally a pathogen.
Yeah, it's like you're just like, oh, salmonella. But it's like, no, that's like, yeah, exactly that. So C. difficile is like a very like nice way of explaining a complicated long science word that's a specific bacteria that essentially like gets into you mostly through feces. They said a lot of people who got sick with it like can't get rid of it because they constantly are like re-eating it in their home. Like it's
like
so gross
something's
because it's like you have to be so clean after you get contaminated with it because it's like feces is disgusting. Anyways,
You're just like farting it around your whole
you're literally
house.
farting around your home or like your kid gets anyways, it's just so gross.
Oh my God, they should have like underwear, but it's like masks.
Is
so that when you
not
fart,
what
like-
it is? Oh, you mean like an N95 underwear?
Yeah, so that if you're like farting out C. difficile, it's like protecting other people.
I mean, I don't know if it's like actually the fart. I think it's more like the like not
Right.
washing your
Yeah,
hands
okay,
like
but I
so well after shitting. It's not like you're like farting truly toxic farts on the subway and being like, "Oops, guess everyone here got C. difficile." But anyways,
Well, I mean, pink eye goes that way.
yeah, okay, I know, but we're oh god. Okay. So it causes severe diarrhea and inflammation of the colon, and 500,000 people get it a year in America alone.
Wow.
America, you nasty. Okay, no, I shouldn't shame people
No, yeah.
for the poo disease. But okay, so this specific bacteria, it's actually a huge issue, and if you're over 65 and you get it, it can be like very damaging. You can die. Like this is something we're all learning. Like, oh yeah, when you're older, like a lot of these things can kill you. So what they found was that like when they just take fecal microbiota transplant of someone who's healthy, put it in someone with C. difficile, that healthy microbiota sort of like ability of those like healthy bacteria to get in there start to kill off the bad bacteria with a 90% success rate in this small study. So they're like, like they've there's been a lot of other ways that they've been trying to deal with C. difficile.
with feces.
Yeah.
Fight fire with fire.
Well, it's like, yeah, that bacteria is in your gut. It's taking over. And it's just like you're helping it with a lot of bacteria from someone else who's healthy coming in. Think of it like a war or something. It's like they're coming in like, I got the troops. And then they take over your ass. But it was just like one of those things that they were like, wow, this worked really well. Again, small study because they can't do these on like huge ones. And also, they end with the caveats of like, we can't say it's a goddamn arancini panacea up in here. But the 90% success rate is a new study. Got people all excited about putting poo in other poo.
I mean, that is amazing. To loop it back to what you said earlier too, though, it feels like it can go both ways. Obviously, if you can transplant like a healthy microbiome to someone, the opposite can be true. And surely there's not just like a person who has like the perfect microbiome.
Except Beyonce.
Except Beyonce. In the same way that like evolutionarily, we don't necessarily know what traits are good for us. Like there is like sickle cell anemia is like preventative against malaria. So like weird times that you realize like sometimes something that might seem as a deficiency might actually be protective in other scenarios. And that's why like humans, like this is why, and I know it's like not necessarily the same term, but like diversity is so important in every aspect.
In your microbiome, we've used that as an
in
analogy.
Society.
Yeah, we use that as an analogy actually, like in one of our videos.
Just having, a variation. But I was just saying like, you could, and they have done studies on mice as well, where if you actually put the like quote unquote bad microbiome into a healthy mouse, it can cause, I think I talked about it on this podcast, like the smoking study, where when people quit smoking, they often gain weight. Yeah. And they did it in mice and did fecal transplants and realized that it could actually cause them, even the mice that had never smoked, it could cause them to gain weight.
Yeah, it was
their
more
microbiome was like
on their microbiome through smoking, not through like needing to eat.
Yeah, it was less to do with their diet and more to do with their body and how it was processing food.
So the crazy thing I also learned about this when learning about how they study rats and mice, like I honestly like we need to make the lab rats like Disney movie that is just about all these rats that have different things gone to them and they have like superpowers, because it's truly horrible what we do to rats and mice. But it like for science, it's like so funny. Like no one wants to talk about it, and I don't either. But they so they literally,
especially when you see like the videos of like mice and rats like being so cute and getting tickled and they love their owners and they like,
oh my god, and I
it
love
like,
mice. Like I love how like when I go camping and mice come out, like everyone screams around me and I'm like, that's a gorgeous little rodent. I don't know why everyone's freaking out.
Well, when they're they're in public, it is scary. But when I've seen somebody own pet mice or rats, and then they're obviously like well kept and groomed, and it's like they're so cute.
But they also represent disease. So the reason we're going on a side note, but it's still science. They represent disease, and they truly have like caused the plague. It wasn't a demon. In case anyone was still thinking it wasn't a demon, it was actually a very, very tiny organism that spread on rats. But anyways, I think there's a evolutionary reason why we're scared of mice and rats because they carry disease. But personally, like for some reason, like unlike arachnophobia, which like spiders scare me, mice have just always been pretty cute to me. And so I just find it funny because sometimes I'll see one and be like a little bit excited because it's like, oh my God, there's like a random wild rodent. And like truly people around me will be like, like scream like a tarantula, and it's just like one of those funny moments where I'm like, oh my God, like I mean I'm one of those people. Yeah, and my friend Allie, it's like you guys like scream, like I think objectively scream.
They are objectively very cute even when I've seen them in the wild or outside.
And they are nocturnal. That's kind of weird.
But it's their movement and unpredictability, much like spiders or like even centipedes and stuff for me, and even so snakes. Small. The movement of them is like really difficult. Like if they were slow, like turtles, I'd be like, that's the cutest little thing.
And they actually have like the most insane heartbeats and are so fast. Like it's true. Like they're actually like, yeah, that's true. That's true.
And I'm like, they do like rats can be very vicious and violent. I feel like mice not so much, but I still picture them like coming and nibbling my nose off.
But wasn't like Is Witches the movie where they're scary? Yeah. Mice? Like there's certain like elements of culture where like I feel like mice have been pitched as like evil, like you can picture like the red eyes and stuff like that, right? Whereas like I only like grew up with like Book Mice, which was like a TVO show that was like so nice that I'm like, I think I skipped all the evil mice footage.
But it is really interesting that there's both sides of it. There's like mice painted as scary things, but there's so much
Stuart Little,
or Ratatouille. Still haven't seen
like I literally loved Stuart Little as a kid. I loved Book Mice, and I think I just like never
Country
saw
Mouse
witches.
and City Mouse.
Yeah, like I just feel like I'm like, why are we all so scared of them? Like they're adorable and they read books. Like what is happening here? Anyways, rats.
Well, I mean, hey, elephants are scared of mice too. It's because of the way they move.
Yeah. Again, was that like a Disney movie? Okay. So
no, they actually are.
Yeah. No, it's true. They truly move so quickly. They're physically on a different element. That's fair. Like they're fast. So there's these things called FSL rats, which is what they use to do a lot of these depressive studies. And they literally like selectively breed rats to have depressed ones. Oh. So like it's so weird because I'm like, how the hell do you know if a rat is depressed?
Is it based off of like how much it eats or what behavior it does?
Like truly all those things, but the most
it's just like emo. It's a goth rat.
Okay, the most interesting way that there's many reasons. One of them's how they eat, like a lot of different things. But the most like one that was visceral to me that I was like, science is insane. Is it's called like a swim test, and they'll put rats in water. And then what they've noticed is like obviously studying these FSL rats like through genetic sequencing and all these things, they're like, oh, they have a lot more markers for depression that we understand. But also the FSL rats, when they're in the water, like will just kind of like they'll say swim as coping mechanism, like they'll try and stay afloat, but they don't have the will to like get out. Whereas like
the other ones are
the healthy ones are like, get me the hell out of here, I need to live. And it's literally like they do swim tests, and then like the ones that kind of are just like whatever, I could die, they're like depressed.
That's depressed.
And then so like literally this study was crazy. They took people with major depressive disorder, humans, and healthy people,
and threw them in the water.
No, imagine that is absolutely immoral. But I love how we're just like, but we'll obliterate rats. But they took their microbiomes, okay, healthy and people with major depressive disorder.
Yeah.
Then they took their feces, and it was really fun to read about them all like shitting on cups and like having to give over their feces. Then they did the math based on the microbiome of those things. They diluted it. They added glycerol. They did all these things. They fed it to the mice. And they found that like the healthy human were able to make an FSL rat want to get out of the water more and potentially be less depressed.
So it was human poo into a rat.
And then the depressed humans, they gave to healthy rats, and all of a sudden the healthy rats were treading water and didn't want to get out. Plus all the other studies, but I thought thought the treading water one was it's not
Yeah.
that funny, but it's kind of insane that like people in lab coats are like dropping them in water. It's like like from a movie, you're like, people don't do that. It's like, no, yeah, there's like grad students across the world like drowning rats, being like, oh, that one didn't really want to get out, depressed. Anyway,
And then
so
they're
like it literally
breed it because we need more depressed rats.
yeah, it's breed it. We want a bunch of depressed rats. So anyways, that's interesting. Another
Very
example of why you can leave this podcast being like fecal transplants are so interesting, but I can't, say that's the reason why. They don't know why. They just know when they put a depressed versus microbiome in a healthy rat, it decided to passively cope while it swam and didn't really want to get out that bad. Isn't that
Very
crazy?
interesting.
I was honestly reading this study like giggling. I was obsessed, like being like,
That's
are
morbid.
you serious? There's also like mazes and like you're right, food
Other
and
ways.
hunger. There's a lot more that are
Wasn't it last week
obvious.
that you talked about putting little vests on rats as fetishes?
They put vests on rats and made them have sex, and then the rats would need the vest to have sex.
Oh my god, the things we do to rats and mice.
I think I got like, okay, no, never mind. Well, no.
No, okay,
I'm not
moving
bringing it up. I'm not bringing it up. We're not going down that side note. We'll continue.
Yeah, it is so fascinating. Like, I won't go too much into one more study. I just want to talk about aging and the reverse effect of aging, because obviously it seems pretty crazy, like that we can help humans' health, depression, like social ability. But this study actually found that they could rejuvenate old rats by fecal transplants in terms of their energy levels, in terms of the way they acted. They basically took like 3 to 4 month old mice, which are considered young adults, and 20-month-old mice, which they said was ancient by mice standards.
Oh my God. See, their hearts are beating so fast. Their lives are just sped up.
Um,
Did you know that there's a finite kind of amount of heartbeats in most organisms on Earth?
Yeah.
So it's like because the mouse's is so fast, like that makes like physical biological sense that they die like earlier than, for example, ours are slower. But then there's ones that are even slower than us, like those goddamn tortoises that live forever.
And whales too, right?
It's kind of like existentially depressing to me.
Yeah, it's like,
It's like we're not special.
No, not at all.
Wow, Soprano's getting to me. Okay, go.
Either way, the old mice, not only did their microbiome start to resemble the young people, this is when they fed them like over 8 weeks. And I was like, they're feeding them the poo.
Did they start to look snatched?
Yeah, no.
You're lying.
Their brains changed. It said
Oh.
the hippocampus, which is associated with learning and memory, became more physically and chemically similar to the young mice. They learned to solve mazes faster. They were better at memorizing the maze layouts.
People are obsessed with mice and mazes. Holy shit.
I know. It's such a like trope that I wonder who was the first. There's probably a person
Some
that's
white
famous.
man.
You don't know.
I do.
No, you're right.
Science.
Okay. But the caveat that this study gave is that the science is mixed because some other studies have shown a cognitive decline in this same setup. So it is back to it being so unclear. There have been times when like young mice microbiomes have made old mice like worse.
I am so like Jennifer Aniston obviously
Has a
or,
fecal
like,
transplant.
Brad Pitt has definitely tried to shove some like young shit up his ass, and I just love the day that like George Clooney does it and comes out
Oh
and
my
he
god!
looks absolutely
Imagine
wretched. Like it's
that's
like
the reason Leonardo DiCaprio is always with like young women. He's actually just stealing their
stealing
poo.
their microbiome. Also, I love like Leonardo DiCaprio is not attractive and hasn't been for years, and I just like saw a tweet once where they're like, why is everyone still like he's hot? It's like he's a yacht owning hypocrite. Okay,
He's
whoa.
crazy.
I don't know what is happening to me right now. Like I'm just like we're leading into side note, but you're right. Leonardo DiCaprio is stealing the microbiomes of the young women, but it's not working. He's one of those random mice that every time he shoves it up, he looks older.
Oh no!
I want one. No,
But
I don't.
like,
No,
don't
I
you
don't
think
want
it's too
one.
uncertain? Obviously,
Yeah, I
I've
don't
honestly
want
thought about it. Like
I would get one if
it's
something
going to be a moment of vulnerability, but I feel like I'm in a much better place now than I was for a long time. I would say like the past like 4 years of my life were like pretty hard.
And we all clap.
Yeah, but I was through that time like I need someone else's
I
poo.
need my
Sometimes I was
Oh
like, you're
my
so mentally
God.
healthy. Do I just like take yours?
Every time I shit, you're like, don't flush. I'm like, what? That's disgusting.
But obviously,
Oh my God.
I didn't do that. But no, I am just like, obviously, there's a lot of people who'd be willing to try these kind of things if they're suffering
Oh my
from
God.
any.
That's so good that you're in a good place. Like, maybe we're going to switch and I'm going to want your poo.
Probably
That'd be a
not.
beautiful moment.
I mean, you just seem so
Also, I feel
stressful.
I'm so annoying, but we like got our microbiomes tested and mine was like the most diverse.
Yeah, mine was not. Mine was pretty bad.
But I take antibiotics all the time, which I thought would make it worse. But
I feel like when you did that test, it had been a while since you had that happen. But I like literally truly grew up on like Pogos and candy cereal.
I thank my parents deeply for what they fed me when I was young.
But in those tests, they did say what you've been eating in like the last 8 weeks can play a big role. And I remember thinking like, oh God, this weekend I was like drinking and then I was like eating takeout. So
one of our
I
friends
remember
was so
thinking,
bad and he was like, I did eat Popeyes. Like he was like trying to like justify it.
And you're right.
And we were like,
really
it's
know.
the Popeyes. But it's like, that's like, no, it wasn't. Like that's
And
why
they
this
had
is so
said,
complicated.
if you're focused before taking those tests on like prebiotics and stuff that's encouraged and like diverse arrays of food, you can like your microbiome is also impacted by your immediate environment as well as your genetics.
It was
and
also
your
being a vegetarian. I'm curious what that means.
Yeah.
Although being a vegetarian, a lot of prebiotics are vegetables and legumes, not necessarily meat. So that's actually, I shouldn't just like say that. It's not a panacea. It's not a Pangea. It's not an arancini.
See ya.
But I also want one just especially if like, I don't know, if someone was like, you can stop getting strep throat, I would be like, yeah, shove that in my hole. I also want to do an episode on douching, which we are going to be doing soon.
Okay.
A lot of ass play on this podcast. And I sometimes whilst douching, I'm like, is this bad that I'm like
It has to be
rinsing
bad.
my hole with water? Because like that's not something like any hunter-gatherer, or did they?
Or did they? And I mean, like, you're sticking other stuff up there. So it's like probably
Like
water's
dicks?
not the worst part.
Wow, there's sometimes where I just feel like someone might be driving in their car with like a kid and just like slam off the
I
top.
mean,
like,
this whole episode's about fecal transplants.
yeah,
so
and like what kid would even want to listen to this?
you don't know. Hey, kids. How's it going?
They might be like, that guy sounds like Barney. So many people have been talking on YouTube about how I like expressive my hands are.
Like, you do a lot of this, like, flailing.
And then I'm like, it's absolutely insane. Like, am I abnormal with my hand movement? That's a stereotype of gay people, I think. But
yeah, I don't know.
like, I actually was
You do
watching
use-
me trying to explain science, and it's like, I cannot stop like moving my hand.
Well, there's a lot of really cool studies on. I read a really cool book about the extended brain, is what it was called, I think. And there's a whole section around how movement and hand gestures, how much better you learn when you do them.
Are you serious?
Like externalizing your learning environment. I need to go back to that. I was gonna make an episode about that.
So when people are like, stop moving your, I mean, some people are like really nice and like, I love how expressive he is. But then a lot of like, you know, what people who like their icon is like the devil or something. And they're like,
Yeah.
this like gay guy needs to stop moving his hands.
I mean, it may like maybe you're not like I maybe it's more intentional. I can't say whether like your form of hand movement is like assisting, but I think hand movement.
I just want to be like, it's actually how I teach enter. That's so funny.
and it's like
read
helps
this
to emphasize.
study.
It helps to like make your point. Creating physical shapes is like a much easier for the brain to contextualize and build associations. So
Oh,
it was like a really cool section.
Way of you responding to my like question of whether I was abnormal and a freak of nature.
No, you are, but like that can be beautiful. We need diversity, and you are the hand diversity we need.
And we need diversity in our holes.
Okay, well, yeah, let's go get some fecal transplants. On to the future.
Yeah.
I would love. We should. It would be. I want to.
Do it online. Do it for
I want to
YouTube.
like make a YouTube video and go to
Yeah.
like a research center where
And
they
get
do it,
one.
and just. I don't want to get one to be honest, but I just want to like.
But imagine I left and I was snatched and looked 22.
It's not gonna change like that.
Excuse me, can I get the one where I like look 22? They'd be like, you need to stop filming and leave. It's definitely gonna happen in LA first too. Where
Yeah,
we
probably
sometimes have
already
to go
is.
for work. So we should, when we go to LA, start asking around, so where are the fecal transplant places at? Because we know everyone here is absolute freaks. Everyone in LA is a freak. I'm like, you're all going to die. You know that, right? That's what I want to say to everyone
regardless
in
of
LA.
what you do.
Regardless of what you do, like death is upon you. This is a really weird city where people pretend death doesn't exist. Death Becomes Her, great movie about that.
I say we ended there.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I hope that was interesting to all.
That was so great episode. Just a reminder at the end, you are going to die. So make sure that you subscribe
Have a good time.
to the... Fuck, I never can do this right. What is it called?
Oh, our podcast?
Yeah, comment on it and be like, really good.
Oh,
It
we haven't
helps.
done that in a long time. If you made it here, honestly, give us a
Wow.
rating.
It really, really helps.
And if you are, yeah, okay, no, we don't know if it helps, but like it makes us feel nice when people do that.
No, and we actually read them.
I haven't in
Okay.
a long time. Okay, thanks guys.
Next
We'll
week
see you
might
next
be
week.
douches. Love you.
Bye.